welcome to today's deep dive. You know, Chuck Barris, the guy behind the Gong show and the dating game, had quite the story to tell.
Yeah, a wild one.
And he told it in his autobiography.
Where he claimed to be a CIA assassin.
Right. So that's what we're diving into, the film Confessions of a Dangerous Mind.
Which, by the way, was George Clooney's directorial debut.
Exactly. We'll be unpacking the film and some of your thoughts and insights about Chuck Barris and, well, this whole idea of a game show host moonlighting as a hitman.
It's a story that really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, what is truth?
Definitely. And how much of our own identities are just, stories we tell ourselves?
Exactly. The film plays with that, never quite confirming or denying Barris's claims, which, leaves it up to us to decide what we believe.
It's like a big puzzle.
Yeah.
And one thing that really stood out to me that you pointed out in your notes was how Barris seemed to crave a more meaningful life, even though he was super successful in television.
Absolutely. The film delves into that, portraying him as this guy wrestling with the shallowness of fame, always searching for something deeper.
Even if that something deeper turns out to be, morally questionable.
Right. Like, was becoming an assassin, if that's what happened, his way of trying to find purpose. It's fascinating.
Which brings us to Sam Rockwell's performance as Barris, which you absolutely loved, right?
Oh, totally. Rockwell is brilliant. He captures Barris's energy, the charisma, but also that underlying darkness, the insecurity. It's a really complex portrayal.
He makes Barris a sympathetic character, even when you're not sure you should be sympathizing with him.
Yeah, exactly. Like in that scene where he's pitching the dating game to a network exec, but simultaneously imagining himself carrying out a hit for the CIA.
Oh, man, that scene.
Clooney's direction in that scene is incredible.
Using split screens to show us both worlds.
Blending reality and fantasy, just like Barris's mind, maybe.
And you know what? You mentioned Fight Club in your notes, and I see the connection, too. The desire to break free from societal expectations, to create this alternate persona.
Both films explore themes of identity, masculinity, that kind of primal urge to rebel against, the emptiness of modern life.
Definitely. And both films use surrealism, those unexpected moments, to pull you into the protagonist's headspace.
Like in Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, when you suddenly shift from the bright, colorful game show set to this dark, shadowy world of espionage.
Right. It's jarring, and it really reflects Barris's, increasingly fragmented state of mind.
Yeah, totally. It's like Clooney's making us question our own grasp on reality.
Like we're right there in Barris's shoes, feeling that disorientation.
I also noticed, and this really jumped out at me, Clooney's use of color, especially red.
Ah, yes. The red. What did you make of that?
Well, red's often associated with danger, violence, so maybe it's visually reinforcing the darkness of Barris's alleged double life,
Yeah, good point. But red can also symbolize passion, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it could also reflect Barris's ambition, that drive to succeed, both in television and, well, as a supposed assassin.
Interesting. I also noticed the recurring use of mirrors, did you?
Oh, the mirrors, yes. There's such a powerful motif, reflecting back, but also distorting. Like Barris's fractured sense of self.
He's trying to find his true reflection, trying to reconcile all these different versions of himself. The game show host, the maybe assassin, the lover, the man searching for meaning.
Yeah, it's like he's lost in a hall of mirrors, unsure of which reflection is real.
That scene where he smashes the mirror is so intense.
Like he's trying to shatter the illusion.
To break free from all the masks he's wearing.
Maybe even from himself.
It makes you wonder, did Chuck Barris even know who he really was?
Right. Was he lost in a maze of his own making, and we're right there with him, trying to figure it out?
And, we were talking about films with similar vibes.
Yeah.
Did The Machinist come to mind for you at all?
Oh, absolutely. The protagonist there is also struggling with guilt, paranoia, and that same distorted reality.
Both films create this atmosphere of unease. You're never quite sure what's real, what's imagined.
And they both make you question the reliability of the narrator.
Like, can we trust anything we're seeing or hearing?
Exactly. They also delve into the dark side of human nature, the ways we can deceive ourselves and others.
And maybe even the ways we try to escape the ordinary, even if it leads us to some pretty dark places.
Yeah, like these films are holding up a mirror to our own anxieties, those fears we try to bury deep down.
And making us confront the possibility that we may not be as in control of our narratives as we like to think.
Definitely. And speaking of control, one thing that struck me about Confessions was how it shows the power dynamics within the entertainment industry. Barris is manipulating people left and right.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned that in your notes, too. Whether it's contestants on his game shows or those network execs.
He's always pulling strings, orchestrating, controlling outcomes.
But at what cost? Does he lose himself in the process?
Which ties into the whole idea of Barris as a puppet master that we talked about.
A role he seemingly plays both in television and in his alleged life as an assassin.
Constantly pulling strings, but is he also a puppet himself? It's a fascinating question.
And it reminds me of something you mentioned in your research.
Yeah.
The Jungian archetype of the trickster.
Yes, the trickster. Always challenging norms, disrupting expectations, blurring the lines between truth and falsehood.
In Barris, with his crazy game shows and unbelievable claims, he embodies some of those trickster qualities, wouldn't you say?
Totally. He's constantly keeping us guessing. Is he telling the truth? Is he playing us? It's like a game he's running.
He's a master of deception, just like the classic trickster figure, forcing us to question our own assumptions.
And maybe even to confront the absurdity of the world around us.
And this archetype also connects to the film's exploration of identity. Barris is always trying on different masks, playing different roles.
And it's never quite clear which version of him is the authentic one. Or if there even is an authentic one.
That ambiguity, that's what makes the film so captivating. We're left with more questions than answers, and that's okay.
It's like Clooney saying, here's the story, or at least a version of it. Now you decide what you make of it.
Which is exactly what we're trying to do in this deep dive.
Right.
Exploring these big questions about truth, identity.
And the allure of a life less ordinary.
Yeah.
The kind of life that Chuck Barris, at least according to him, may have lived. And it really makes you think about the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we want to believe.
And one thing that struck me, especially with all your research on Cold War paranoia, is how the film captures that era's sense of unease.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Suspicion everywhere, secrets.
It was a time when anyone could be the enemy.
Right, exactly. And truth was, well, it was slippery.
The lines were blurred, like in the film itself.
The film becomes a metaphor for that Cold War mentality.
With those shifting perspectives, hidden agendas.
You never know who to trust.
And danger lurking just beneath the surface.
Exactly. And Barris, with his supposed double life, he kind of embodies that duality.
The everyday guy who gets caught up in this world of spies and secrets.
Forced to confront the moral gray areas of this hidden war.
Which brings us to Jim Bird, played by George Clooney. I mean, what a fascinating character.
Oh, he's so smooth, so charismatic, but also dangerous.
The embodiment of that CIA allure, the promise of adventure.
A life beyond the ordinary, right?
He's like a serpent tempting Barris with the forbidden fruit of espionage.
And Barris, he's so eager to escape, you know, to find something more.
He's ripe for the picking.
And that's where that shadow archetype comes in, you know, the one we talked about earlier.
The darker impulses, the stuff we try to keep hidden.
The part of us drawn to danger, power.
The things society tells us are wrong.
Exactly. And maybe, just maybe, Barris's alleged life as an assassin, it's a manifestation of that shadow self.
The part of him that embraces violence, steps outside the lines.
Operates in the shadows.
And the film doesn't sugarcoat the psychological toll it takes on him.
The guilt, the paranoia, the feeling of being utterly alone.
Like in that scene in the Finland hotel room.
Surrounded by surveillance equipment, weapons, totally isolated.
The dark side of that glamorous spy life, Bird dangles in front of him.
Speaking of spy life, there's this quote from your research that I found really insightful. The life of an undercover agent is one of constant deception, not just of others, but of oneself.
Wow. That's powerful.
And it gets to the heart of Barris's internal struggle. Is he becoming the very thing he's supposed to be fighting against?
Does he even know who he is anymore?
We've mentioned a few films with similar themes, but what about Being John Malkovich? Did that one come up for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, both films use surrealism to blur those lines between what's real and what's not.
And they both explore identity as something fluid, something you can slip in and out of.
In Being John Malkovich, you literally enter someone else's mind, see the world through their eyes.
And in Confessions, Clooney uses those sudden cuts, that surreal imagery, to take us inside Barris's head.
To experience his fractured reality.
And make us question our own perceptions.
Which brings us to the game shows themselves. You pointed out their metaphorical significance, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, they're so bright, so over the top, you know.
All spectacle and artificiality.
Maybe a metaphor for the entertainment industry itself, or even for reality as a construct.
It's like Barris is saying, we're all just playing a game.
And then he pushes that idea to the extreme with a game show where the prize is a date with a potential assassin.
Talk about blurring the lines.
It's darkly funny, but also deeply unsettling. And it highlights that question of what's real and what's not, which the film keeps circling back to.
Speaking of unsettling, The film uses a lot of dark humor. Do you think that adds to the unease, or does it lighten the mood?
It's a tricky balance. I mean, on one hand, it adds this layer of absurdity.
Like, is this really happening?
But at the same time, it makes you question whether you should be laughing at all.
It's like the film is daring you to find humor in the darkness.
And maybe pointing out that, well, that darkness is all around us, even in the things we consider entertainment.
So we've talked a lot about the film, but let's get back to Barris himself. What do you think he's confessing to in Confessions of a Dangerous Mind?
I think it goes beyond just the alleged murders.
Right. What else is there?
It's a confession of a life built on deception, of longing for something more.
Maybe even a confession that he's lost himself along the way.
That he doesn't even know who he is anymore. It's an existential crisis playing out on screen.
It's like he's bearing his soul, even if we can't be sure if he's telling the truth.
Which makes it all the more compelling, right?
Absolutely. Because on some level, we can all relate to that struggle with identity, that desire for something more.
That fear of being exposed as a fraud.
And that's what makes the film so powerful. It speaks to something universal within us.
It's a reminder that we're all capable of both great and terrible things. And sometimes the line between those two is, well, it's not so clear.
It's like the film is saying, hey, look inside yourself. What do you see?
And that's what you were hoping to get out of this deep dive, right?
To explore those big questions, to delve into the darkness and the light.
To try and make sense of the complexities of human nature.
And maybe, just maybe, to learn a little bit more about ourselves in the process.
It's like the film itself is a hall of mirrors.
Right. And we're trying to find our way out, or at least find the real Chuck Barris.
And that brings us back to that central question. Was he really a CIA assassin?
Honestly, after all this, I'm still not sure what to believe. Are you?
I don't think there's an easy answer. Clooney's not giving us one, is he?
No, he's not. He's just presenting us with Barris's story.
And letting us decide what's true.
Which is, I think, part of what makes it so fascinating.
It definitely gets under your skin. One thing that really struck me was how the film portrays the psychological effects of violence.
Oh, yeah. Me too. It's not glorified, is it?
Not at all. Like in that scene where Barris is describing an assassination, he's so matter-of-fact.
But his hands are shaking.
You see it in those close-ups, that subtle detail.
Even if he was a trained killer, that trauma, it's still there.
It shows you that violence, no matter how you justify it, it leaves a mark.
On everyone involved.
We've talked about symbolism, but what about the gun? What did you make of that?
The gun. I mean, it's such a powerful image.
A symbol of power, control, death, obviously.
And in the film, it represents, well, Barris's alleged ability to kill.
But also his own inner turmoil, the destructive nature of his secrets.
Like when he holds the gun to his own head.
That scene, oh man.
So much despair.
It speaks to those existential themes you mentioned before. That search for meaning.
Barris wants something more, something beyond fame, beyond fleeting pleasures.
But that search takes him to some dark places.
And maybe the darkness was always there inside him.
We were going to talk about the social commentary aspect too, weren't we?
Oh yeah. What did you pick up on there?
I think Clooney's definitely critiquing the entertainment industry,
Showing how superficial it can be.
And how it exploits people.
He's also commenting on the culture of violence, especially during the Cold War.
It's there in the background, always present.
And the film doesn't shy away from showing the brutality of Barris's alleged actions.
But it also implicates us, the viewers.
We consume violence as entertainment.
Which makes us complicit in a way.
It's a powerful message,
yeah.
Especially today with reality TV and all that.
It makes you think about the media you consume.
And how it shapes your view of the world.
But also how we shape our own narratives,
Like Barris creating this elaborate fantasy world.
Are we all doing that to some extent?
It's a good question, isn't it? Do we all embellish our stories? Create personas?
And if so, what does that say about us?
This whole idea of a fabricated life, it reminds me of Catch Me If You Can.
Oh, interesting. The con man story.
Yeah. Frank Abagnale Jr. impersonating all those people.
Both films deal with deception, identity, creating a life that's, more exciting than reality.
And they both make you question what's true.
Which is maybe the biggest takeaway from Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. It's a film that makes you think, makes you question, and ultimately leaves you wondering.
About Chuck Barris. About the nature of truth. And maybe even about yourself.
It's a wild ride, for sure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. It's a film that stays with you. So keep exploring those films that challenge you, that make you think, that take you on a journey. And until next time, happy watching.